honestly beyond crazy, but also beyond humbling, because you're looking at one of the greatest players to ever come through such a great program, that played for what is considered to be one of the greatest all-time college football coaches, and knowing how much this place means to that one person, and to be on the staff with Coach Klein is really surreal and humbling for me personally, because it's such a personal endeavor for him, to where he's only going to bring in people that he really trusts. And I don't take my opportunity lightly here because of that.
Hello and welcome to the Verbal Commitment Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Kevin Flaherty, and I'm here, as always, with my good friend Ryan Wallace, and we're talking about the world of local recruiting, from Kansas and Kansas City prospects to the college classes at Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri. It's National Signing Day, and we'll be talking with new Kansas State Director of Recruiting, Greg Svarczkopf, about the Wildcats recruiting and his new position, so stay tuned for that. This special episode should appear on the K-State Wildcats News and Analysis KCSN channel on YouTube. But to find all of our episodes from here on out, not miss anything, subscribe to that KCSN Varsity channel on YouTube to follow along. You'll get a notification if we do a live show like we did with Ian Premer announcing his finalists this past year. And you'll be able to find each show regardless of its content, whether it's KU, K-State, or Missouri. So go ahead. Remember to like this video, leave us a comment here as well. We do check the comments and try to answer any questions we have, but make sure you go to KCSN Varsity and subscribe to make sure you aren't missing out on anything like that. If you're listening on an audio platform, you can leave us a review, a 5-star rating, wherever you get your podcasts, like Apple or Spotify, and follow along with Verbal Commitment on KCSN there. Word of mouth always helps too, so tell your friends about us. As always, we appreciate you guys helping us to grow and getting us in front of more people like you. Kansas State finished with the number 51 overall class, according to 24/7 Sports, with the overall ranking taking into account both the players signed in a more traditional recruiting window, high schoolers and junior college transfers, and those players added through the transfer portal. That includes the number 53 recruiting class and a top 40 transfer class, with the Wildcats adding 21 recruits and 26 transfers to their roster. This group could provide a strong foundation for Colin Klein's Wildcats moving forward, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo kind of what we've been saying on the show for much of the last month, when we've kind of, gone week by week and just looked at, who Kansas State's adding to their transfer class. I mean, we've said long ago how well this staff did at finding a couple pieces that are instant impact. Wendell Gregory comes to mind. But then also being able, Josh Manning on the offensive side comes to mind, but then also being able to find guys that are going to have multi-years of eligibility left, but also still have a little bit more in the tank. And I thought that they did a really nice job in the transfer portal, again, of kind of balancing out, knowing that there were a lot of holes on that roster to fill. You didn't want to just go all in as easy as it could be on 2026. They went and got some guys that are going to help them right away in 2026, and a lot of guys that are going to be competitive in 26, but also come right back in 27 and even 28 and provide some stability and some veteran leadership and experience on this roster.
Was there any group that you felt like the Wildcats really aced in this cycle? And I'm talking recruits and transfer portal, an area where maybe they did a really good job of filling things out.
Yeah, I would say that if there was a spot that I just thought that they really nailed, probably defensive back.
Yep.
And I think part of that wasn't so much just what they did at the high school level. They got Garrick Dixon, they got Josiah Villamel, who ended up being a really good late steal, a guy that they were able to pry away from. I think he was taking visits or interest from like Texas. I mean, some big time schools. Liked what they did there. But not only that, then they go out and end up getting a lot of guys that had some big time experience to bolster that the safety position and maybe the nickel and cornerback positions. Jasam Prevard from Virginia was a guy that played a ton for a really good Cavaliers team a year ago. Adrian Maddox is a guy at Georgia that I think, originally when I went and we talked about him earlier, like he's a guy that initially you're thinking Georgia, great. Then you see that he doesn't play very many snaps and you're like, God, I don't know. And then I went and dissected his tape a little bit more. And like, he is a guy that can come in and play day one and play a variety of different roles for them. Corey Beasley. I mean, they did a really nice job. Caleb Patterson at Illinois, really nice job in the transfer portal. But Kevin, the other reason why I'm commend what they were able to do in the defensive backfield so much is they were able to keep together a lot of the young pieces that had a lot of promise. They were already on the roster. And to me, that's kind of a recruiting win. In today's day and age, you got to be able to retain as well as bring in new guys. And so again, to be able to hang on to some of the guys, Zayshawn Rich, obviously, right? Donovan McIntosh, he was in the portal and then he gets out of the portal. Sirius Stinyard, JoJo Scott, Martell Jackson. You go down the list of guys that they were able to pick, but probably the biggest one when you go down and you think about the safety position, Logan Bartley was a kid that I think a lot of Kansas State fans, we were kind of on pins and needles of like, are we going to be able to keep this kid that showed so much promise as a true freshman? RJ Collins is back. Wesley Fair is back. Dom Mitchell is a kid that didn't get on the field. He redshirted last year, but I've talked a lot about during his recruitment. What was it, 2 years ago now. So for me, secondary. And then on the flip side of that, if you're just talking about kind of an area that I thought they hit hard, but I'm still kind of on the fence about, it's offensive line. Kevin, I thought the transfer class that they brought in at offensive line, Tanner Morley is a guy that I really, really like out of Colorado State. And there's some other pieces there that could be competitive, but the portal haul wasn't, you didn't really have that like George Fitzpatrick from a year ago. That's an immediate plug and play. I think Tanner Morley will be that guy. I think it, by all accounts, maybe they're high on the potential that a Tyler Johnson from Auburn brings at tackle, but wasn't overwhelmed by the transfer portal class. Good news is they're really ecstatic. Chris Kleiman's staff was, but also the incoming staff with Colin Klein is really ecstatic, I think, about the guys that they signed at the high school level, with Oliver Miller, and we'll transition it back to you with LaMarcus Barber. Kansas State did a really nice job locally after, kind of coming out of the gates a little slower to the Jayhawks, but they rebounded really well. LaMarcus Barber, Arlie Morrell here late. Obviously, we all know about Lawson McGraw. But then we talked a couple weeks ago too about, the guys that we were expecting them to sign as PWOs or potentially maybe some scholarship there with Blake J, Jackson Holly, and Nash Morrison. Those are three really good, ID kids that this staff went and was able to pluck late. Of those three, I'm probably highest on Blake J by quite a wide margin, actually, probably. That's no disrespect to Jackson Holly or Nash Morrison. I just think Blake J he's a difference maker, and his versatility, I think, comes in handy. But again, throwing it back to you kind of on that local front, they're really ecstatic about the offensive line. And for you and I, high on Oliver Miller. There's some other guys, that look good in this class from a high school level. But I tell you what, I'm hard pressed to go against LaMarcus Barber being kind of the steady Eddie in that group to be, not plug and play from his freshman year forward, but like a guy that you can count on being a difference maker as a starter. And if nothing else, as kind of like a sixth man in the rotation for years to come out of Mill Valley.
Yeah, it was kind of a Freaky Friday local class. And what I mean by that was the body swap element of it, right? Like typically K-State wins the head-to-head battles for in-state guys, and KU has to kind of get its work done in the dark a little bit, try and find guys that are undervalued that maybe, didn't have a Kansas State offer, but they evaluate and wait and say, hey, this is a guy that can play at Kansas. We know he can. He just doesn't have the attention. In this case, Ryan, Kansas won all of the local head-to-head battles with Kansas State. But Kansas State really evaluated well with those guys that Kansas did not offer. And I say that not to say, okay, you should, whatever else. We loved Lawson McGraw. We loved Arlie Morrell. We were some of the first people to talk about Arlie Morrell, like way back. We have had LaMarcus Barber consistently higher than the recruiting sites have. And so none of that is to say, K-State's getting the guys that KU didn't want, but I felt like K-State really did a nice job of sort of adjusting to, we're not getting Josh Galbraith, we're not getting Hunter Higgins. J.J. Dunnigan, even though he went to Miami, picked Kansas over, kind of Kansas State and some other options early on. Kansas State recruiting is never about who you miss on. It's about who you get, the players that you get into your program, whether they can develop and turn into good players. LaMarcus Barber, like you said, so underrated. I think, when you look at a guy that already has that frame, that size, that strength, that nastiness, but also some technical ability, also some ability to move at that side, you find a lot of times interior offensive linemen are undervalued because everybody wants a guy to be 6'5", 6'6". Sometimes the best offensive lineman is just a 6'3" guy. He's just really, really good. Yep. And I think that was what we felt about him. Arlie Morrell, we said it when Ian Premer wound up choosing Notre Dame. Arlie Morrell has some notes, can do some of the same things in the passing game that an Ian Premer could do. He's not the complete package that Ian Premer was. He was a 5-star for a reason, but Arlie Morrell can do a lot of similar things in the passing game in terms of stretching the field, getting the ball in unorthodox ways because of the way he can run, and being able to, to stretch the field, make catches away from his body, really natural athlete there. And then you mentioned Lawson McGraw, who's a guy that you and I have talked up quite a bit. Kansas had him in camp, worked him out as a tight end, decided not to go there. Kansas's loss, I think, is going to be a major gain for K-State because I think when you look at Lawson, he can play any one of about 4 or 5 different positions, but I would be surprised myself if 3 or 4 years from now we're sitting here saying, Lawson didn't wind up playing a major role at K-State. I think that kid is born and bred to play high-level football, and I think he's going to do it in Manhattan.
Well, and I think, too, being able to get an Arlie Morrell kind of helps solidify, I hope, fingers crossed, that Lawson McGraw stays on defense and not at tight end.
Yeah.
Can he play? We've talked about this. Can Lawson McGraw play tight end? Of course. Do I think that that's kind of where his bloodlines lie, and where his highest value could be? No, I think he's a natural defender that can play potentially up on the defensive line and put his hand in the ground, or maybe, something more like we saw maybe a Cassius Howell do at Texas A&M under Jordan Peterson. So I guess the last thing I'll say is just echoing a point that you had, which is commend Taylor Bratt, but also some of the guys that were on that outgoing Chris Kleiman staff for not only, like you said, the evaluation that they did locally, but so much pressure is put on K-State to win the state.
Yep.
And I think things started to kind of snowball this year where it could have been really easy for them to start second guessing themselves and maybe kind of go against the grain and go against kind of what their heart and their eyes are telling them. And they decided to stay true to, they weren't going to go above and beyond. They weren't going to go past a certain kind of line in the sand for various guys in the in-state class. And I think part of it was just because they trusted their evaluations. And I think the other part of it was they knew, as you said, some of the other guys that were still left in this class that were kind of being looked over, or I don't want to say slept on, but maybe just kind of waited on by other staffs. And K-State jumped all over that with Lawson McGraw, LaMarcus Barber. I mean, Barber's already going to be up there this winter. He's an early enrollee. So, yeah, I mean, I said maybe it won't happen right away. Maybe it does happen right away, that he can be competitive for this offensive line group because, hey, it is completely wide open, I think, in Manhattan right now. Nobody's spot is safe outside of, Avery Johnson and a handful of others.
One more group that I did want to get to before we go into the break and our interview here, Ryan. Wide receiver. Kansas State in that class, going junior college route, getting Sally from Hutchinson, as people will say, that's what they look like, right? That's what they're supposed to look like from a size speed standpoint. You add in Josh Manning as another immediate guy. Those two guys are both, first off the bus type of good looking guys on the hoof. But then a guy that you've really singled out as somebody who's got a little juice, got a little something, might not see it this year, but somebody for K-State fans to be excited about is Lovett, and having him in that group, building toward the future as well.
Yeah, I mean, for the future, I love the idea of Max Lovett coming in. I think he's got the talent level to try and be competitive right away for Thad Ward, but at the same time, I love the idea of him learning under some of these guys. Even somebody like a Sterling Lockett that hasn't really seen a whole lot of the field and may not see much more of it this season, but that's a guy that I feel like if you wanted to just be a sponge to, especially a guy like Max Lovett that might play kind of in that same role, he's a great guy that I feel like he can learn under. But when you talk about the immediate for this fall, yeah, Josh Manning, you keep Jaron Tibbs, you talk about Derek Sally coming in, though, you're looking at 6'3", 211 for Josh Manning right now, 6'3", 210 for Tibbs, and then Sally checks in at 6'3", 213 right now. So they're giving some big targets, some guys that can go up and make, the ball doesn't have to be, an NFL pass from Avery Johnson. These guys should be able to go up and get it. They're going to block their asses off. Josh Manning and Derek Sally, you can go run the tape back. They make some highlight reel grabs, but they are tremendous blockers in the bubble screen game. Anything in the flats, K-State fans have watched it just dreadfully for the last couple of years. I think that will change this year, part because I think this coaching staff will really hammer home that you've got to be able to block on the outside. Colin Klein played under Bill Snyder, and that was obviously that was something that was in every year for Bill Snyder and Dana Dimmel and all those guys. You got to be able to block on the outside, win the outside, and open up holes for another guy like an Isaiah Williams, who again is kind of going quietly under the radar a little bit in this class. He's a really good wide receiver. They brought in Brandon White from Hawaii, who's kind of a speedster. I mean, he's more of a gadget guy. I don't know if he's going to compete for, a big time role right away, but he's a guy that can be a mismatch a little bit. And then again, more freshmen, Caprice Keith comes in 6'1", 200. They were even able to keep a Larry Porter in the fold and Adonis Moisey in the fold. So a lot of competition there, Kevin. I'm glad you talked about wide receiver. That is it's a group that I think you kind of can pencil in your starters, but a lot of competition behind them, where if you do have an injury, if you do have somebody kind of rise to the occasion, they got a lot of different varieties and roles that they can kind of roll out onto the field for Colin Klein's offense.
A quick reminder that you can follow along with us on Twitter/X at verbalcommit_KC for clips from the show, conversations about local players, and even the odd highlight. And subscribe to KCSN Varsity here on YouTube to see all of our shows. We'll be right back with our interview with Kansas State Director of Recruiting Greg Svarczkopf right after this.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Welcome back to the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on KCSN. We're joined by new Kansas State Director of Recruiting, Greg Svarczkopf. Greg, welcome to the show.
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me.
Of course. With you being a new addition at K-State, not a lot of K-State fans might know you. So could you start off just by giving us a little bit of your background and kind of what led you to this point?
Yeah, first thing I want to say is you guys do an incredible job. I've watched you guys for a while and appreciate everything that you do. Really pubbing up this area and everything that you do, giving a platform and opportunity for guys that are, really coming up in this area. It's really been fun to watch and really cool to see. So wanted to kind of start there, but yeah, for me, I'm really a coach's son and kind of started off in the coaching side of things and coached some Division III ball back home in Indiana, NAIA schools, and really went back to my alma mater back in 2015 and worked with the secondary there for a little bit before going to Kent State as a graduate assistant, University of New Mexico, there for 2 years before I was promoted my third year there, really my first ever year working specifically in recruiting. And then from there went on to Army to KU to K-State. And it's been a really incredible journey for me personally. I've really enjoyed every second of being here, my short time here, and didn't really see myself getting into recruiting, just being transparent with you, but have always loved the recruiting aspect of college football, building relationships with people and really giving other people opportunities and building relationships that last a lifetime has always been something that has been really impactful for me personally. And I've loved it ever since and have never looked back.
Greg, I want to pepper you with just a couple like kind of easy, quick ones here. But first out of the gate, actually speaking for Kevin, let me be the first to say Power Cat looks great on you, sir.
There
I
it is. Let's make it more prominent.
I will not ask you what Taylor Bratt, the bringer of the Cats, asked you to do with all of your KU gear. We'll leave that to the side. But
Yeah.
staying on the subject of apparel, have you purchased or will you purchase some Indiana National Championship apparel? Which is you're an alumnus there, correct?
Haven't yet, but I need to. Yeah, I mean, that's been an incredible journey to see those guys. I mean, that's been really, really cool. And I'll just be honest with you guys. My senior year was historically, even for Indiana, one of the worst years that they had. We were 1-11 and had no FBS wins that year. We were the only team all of FBS to not have a win that year. And it's been incredible to watch what they've done. And like Kevin Wilson was an incredible coach and had an incredible staff. Same deal with Tom Allen. And it's really kind of funny when you look back on, the 2019, 2020 years of that Tom Allen staff. You have Kalen DeBoer there, you have Sheridan there, you have Kane Womack there, and a lot of guys that are really some of the biggest names in coaching. And Tom Allen was coach of the year. Michael Penix was the quarterback. So they've had a lot of great people come through that place, but beyond excited to see what they did this year. That was really cool.
Okay. So then that pivots me into my first real question. Then you mentioned your senior year there, 2011. I did some homework. So Colin Klein was kind of kickstarting the legend status, right? It was his junior year. Then 2012, you stayed in Bloomington as Colin is kind of on his Heisman run. Do you recall like ever watching him like on national television from Bloomington? And did you ever think, hey, I'm going to work for that guy one day?
No, you're exactly right. I was thinking about that the other day. It's just like how surreal it all is. Just being honest with you, and it's even cooler to think about the other people that are in the building that were there playing during that time period. But it's honestly beyond crazy, but also beyond humbling because you're looking at one of the greatest players to ever come through such a great program that played for what is considered to be one of the greatest all-time college football coaches, and knowing how much this place means to that one person and to be on the staff with Coach Klein is really surreal and humbling for me personally because it's such a personal endeavor for him to where he's only going to bring in people that he really trusts. And I don't take my opportunity lightly here because of that. And every person that I've met that's walked in this building, this place is so personal for them, whether it's people that went to school here, that played here. It's been really, really cool, really humbling. And I don't take any of that lightly. It's been really, really fun.
Ryan obviously brought up the Power Cat logo. I did want to ask you, you've had to recruit against the Power Cat logo for a significant portion of time. And at some points, especially when you guys got in here, that had to be like banging your head against a wall, just in terms of the difference in perception and how you guys had to build that up at Kansas to where people did look at you as a realistic option. At the same time, I know you haven't been on the job for too long yet, but are you looking forward to kind of being on the other side? And what was your impression of, man, like all these guys want to go to K-State? It's really tough to make in-state inroads with a lot of these guys.
Well, kind of like you were talking about, Ryan, there's so much tradition here, and what this logo represents is really taking place for years and years of people watching a tough, gritty, really dominant football program for a very long time that was built through hard work, that was built through, people within this Midwestern area, but also specifically within the state of Kansas, of really recruiting the best players within the state and trying to paint an 8-hour radius of recruiting the best players here that embody that. And, for all those reasons, something that coach is really big on is really what we call here is the new old school, where you're bringing back some of those old school values and traditions, but also having a new flavor to it. And someone with his background that is one of the greatest players to ever come through K-State, but is also had one of the most innovative minds in all of college football right now, and took a great program to the college football playoff. Extremely intelligent, extremely hardworking person individually, that's going to bring in new flavor, new ideas with a lot of the traditional values that fans are used to seeing from the Bill Snyder era. It's really, really cool and really exciting.
You did a bang up job with the KU class locally, the 2026 class. I'm curious though, like now with K-State, like does the in-state pitch change for you at all? Like, do you approach recruiting any differently, or does it not matter, to Greg Svarczkopf about whether it's KU, K-State, Indiana, whatever logo you're wearing? Do you still approach recruiting with kind of the same process?
It's the same process for me personally. It's really just building relationships with people, understanding who they are as individuals and getting to know them on a personal level. And then really, as much as they're interviewing us, we're interviewing them as well and figuring out what type of person they are, what their family is like. And from there, I think there's just a trust factor that has to be on both sides of that before you're ever able to get that kid back on campus once again. But I think, I'm not going to lie to you guys, it is definitely really cool to be here and having to battle, a little bit of the history on the back end of it. And now being able to be a part of that history has been really, really cool, really humbling, really amazing. But I don't think who I am or my process is going to change for me personally. And I think just from the top down, from our head coach to our assistant coaches to the recruiting staff, they're all relationship driven people. And our head coach, says it, but it is a family business. You guys have seen it, on Twitter. This is his family, and it's one thing to say it, but he lives it and embodies it every single day. His family is here all the time around the building, which is really cool to see. He wants his assistant coaches and staff members to be great fathers, great husbands. Their families are here all the time. And he wants the players that are on the roster to have a relationship with their families as well, because it is truly a family and you're around these people so much every single day. So it's a family business for every single person that's involved. And that's been a really cool, fun part of being here. And because recruiting is getting to know the prospect, but you're also recruiting that person's family and other decision makers that are really involved in that person's life, and getting to know all of those people is extremely important. And I know that our head coach, our assistant coaches all know that and have said that's going to be a major point of emphasis. And it's been cool because our head coach told the entire staff, we're going to be better evaluators than everyone in the country, but we're also going to be better relationship builders. And it's one thing to talk about it, but once again, these people are doing it every single day, and it's been really impressive to watch them on a day-to-day basis, how hard they work at it and how much they're getting to know people. You guys all know Taylor, obviously, and he's one of the best relationship builders I've ever seen. I've learned a lot in my short time of working with him, and there's a reason why he's so well respected. There's a reason why he knows so many people. There's no fakeness to it whatsoever. That guy is the same person that is out on the recruiting trail, same person that's in the office every single day. And what I really appreciate about him is his humility about it. When you're talking to him, it's never about him. It's always about who he's talking to, and he's always trying to get to know that person, and he makes everyone feel really welcome at all times. And he just has a really captivating, unique way of doing that, where he can connect with anyone from any background. It's been really cool and really impressive to watch now that I'm not competing against him. It's been really fun. But he's an incredible person. He's been incredibly welcoming to me, and you don't stick around a place as long as he has without being extremely good at what you do, but also without being a good person. And that's definitely the case for Taylor. I've really loved working with him.
Has he gotten you to try the fried pies outside of the gas station with the Alma Creamery just yet?
Not yet, but I haven't had a Brat's broth yet.
Oh, all right.
Those are try. I mean, his face is on everything, everywhere in the town of Manhattan.
Yeah. You said you have had Taco Lucha though, right?
Taco Lucha is outstanding. Great place.
All right. What was your order? Just curious.
You know what? I just got loaded up on the appetizers. That was really about it. The first time.
The raspberry, like, what is it, like blackberry bean dip or whatever?
It was their bean dip.
Yeah,
it was their bean dip. World famous.
Yeah, that's
Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong. That and Nancy.
So I was going to ask real quick, Ryan. You brought up your time in Indiana. You actually played at Indiana, and it was an interesting story how you got there, right? Because didn't they send like an invite to a teammate of yours or something like that? Like how did that process work out to where Greg Svarczkopf became an Indiana Hoosier?
Yeah, I always joke around and say that played is a strong word. I was on the team. Didn't see a ton of playing time, but it was an opportunity for me as a preferred walk-on because I earned an academic scholarship. I was really realistically probably going to play non-scholarship ball somewhere else. And going into my junior season, one of my teammates who was a scholarship player there eventually got an invitation to camp, and I actually grabbed his invitation to the invite-only camp and sent in an email to that address, and luckily no one really noticed. And I was able to, perform well enough, I guess, to be considered to be recruited there as a preferred walk-on. And it also didn't hurt that my dad was pretty close friends with the head coach at the time. So I don't think that they were recruiting me based on my size or athletic ability. I don't think that was the case, but I was lucky enough to get to play there.
Greg, I wanted to go back just for a second, kind of tie a bow on the Taylor Bratt conversation. Obviously, again, you guys were foes, and now you're sharing an office together, maybe temporarily. But obviously, when it was announced that you were joining K-State, obviously a lot of K-State fans like, what does this mean for Taylor Bratt? And could you clarify maybe a little bit about? I know obviously you guys are going to work together quite a bit, but like how maybe your roles at least will differ here in 2026, and also maybe how they work together cohesively.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, Taylor is going to be doing exactly what he's always done, which is be one of the best recruiters in the country. But he's also going to have an elevated responsibility with different things that he'll be doing outside of recruiting. And it really just gives him an opportunity to be able to be a face and voice of the program as needed. And whether that's speaking at different events and whether that's being out on the road recruiting. So he's going to continue doing what he's always done. And then hopefully I get to work with him and under his vision, under our head coach's vision, under our general manager's vision of, within that recruiting department of kind of adding value or new ideas as they see fit. But it's an incredible group between Trey Scott, our general manager, with, over a decade of NFL experience, and then also most recently coming on the other side of it of being an agent. And hopefully I'm just another voice that has some background in high school recruiting that he hasn't yet had, but he's incredibly smart, and his short time here has figured it out really quickly about the high school aspect of it. But hopefully we're all just on the ground floor helping each other, just continue to elevate the program, continuing to recruit guys at a high level.
Kevin, if I may, Greg, what would you say is your strength right now in your specific role? Is there something that you feel like you really bring to the table that is an added element that maybe the K-State recruiting department just hasn't had or gets a boost from with what you provide?
I think, just being brand new here, and they have such a great structure in place and such a great staff in place, and hopefully it's just maybe sprinkling in a couple new ideas that they haven't had. But for the most part, I would say my personal strength would be evaluating and relationship building. And I think so many people here do such an incredible job of that already without me here. But hopefully it's just another person that can continue to bring that to the table.
Is there anybody you recruited who chose K-State that you're kind of now happy that you're on this side? Is it Lincoln? Is it somebody that you're just kind of like, man, it's kind of nice how that worked out that we on the same team now?
No kidding. Yeah, you said it exactly. Lincoln Kier is the absolute first person that comes to mind. And it was really a surreal moment because he took the time to come down to my office and dap me up and welcome me. So phenomenal kid, phenomenal family. And that was a really cool experience. And obviously still close to the family and close to Lincoln. Really excited to be with him now. And that was definitely a heartbreaking, you're so invested every single time you put time into getting to know these recruits and their families. And it's even that when they go to other schools, you're part of a small piece of you is still happy for them, but man, it was heartbreaking. So definitely really excited to be here with Lincoln.
Another guy that you get to realign yourself with is Jordan Peterson. And I know he's a guy, if you look at your two resumes, you guys have shared pit stops along the way. I'm curious, kind of, his insight as well as anybody kind of in that building. So two-part question, like what is his greatest asset as a recruiter? And then is there a non-negotiable when it comes to playing for his defense? I mean, you've kind of seen him as a recruiter, you've seen him as a coach. So like, what's his greatest asset as a recruiter? And man, if you're going to play under Jordan Peterson, what is a non-negotiable if you're going to be part of his defense?
So I've known Jordan for a very long time. We worked together at New Mexico when I was a graduate assistant. He was the safeties coach. So that was really my first time getting to know him. Incredible person, first and foremost, very high character individual, great father, great husband. But because of all of those things, he's a great recruiter. And because of all those things, he's a great coach. He coaches his guys extremely hard, but he also builds the relationship within that framework to where he can push those guys. So those guys, anyone who's ever played for that guy absolutely loves him and looks at him the same way they would a father. And he's developed some of the all-time great defensive backs within this conference. Went to A&M and worked for a great defensive coach, one of the best in the entire profession under Mike Elko, and is now bringing all of those experiences here with him. And like you said, Ryan, he's relentless. I mean, he just does not sleep. That's been kind of the ongoing joke between myself and some of the other recruiting staff members, where you might be getting hit up at 11 o'clock at night, and then he sends you a text, the next morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, because he's always thinking about it. And just really because he's such a good person, but so relentless in what he does, and he cares so much. I think that's really what makes him stand out. Just overall, he's outworking other people and building authentic relationships. But to answer the second part of your question, toughness and speed are two things that he is always talking about. And you can find out those things throughout the recruiting process, but really, as far as a tape standpoint, it doesn't matter if you're a defensive back. It doesn't matter if you're a defensive lineman. You got to have guys that are quick to trigger, guys that are tough, guys that are good football players.
I know that at Kansas, you were kind of focused in on your class there, and K-State had their own class, and you weren't really involved in that. But at the same time, you did get a chance to see or evaluate LaMarcus Barber. You had a chance to evaluate Arlie Morrell. You had a chance to evaluate Lawson McGraw came to KU camp. What did you think of those in-state guys and kind of how they fit what you've talked about as sort of Kansas State's ethos?
Yeah, absolutely. Love all three of those guys from a film standpoint. And like you said, Kevin, those were guys that were already committed here before I'd even gotten here. So just really fired up and excited about them because I really admired all three of them. LaMarcus, the first thing that comes to mind is a guy that's light on his feet, tough finisher, physical player. The wrestling background definitely shows itself from an athleticism and toughness standpoint. You talk about Lawson and being a legacy player, very high ceiling, very athletic, great ball skills. And then Arlie being a 3-sport athlete, extremely competitive, man. Great basketball player, great track athlete. All three of those guys have a really high ceiling athletically. And then, like you said, Kevin, adding in the toughness element, all of them are just three really tough kids that their film definitely kind of flashes and shows you that.
Greg, what's like the absolute most important part kind of in today's day and age of having success as a director of recruiting? And I don't even want to just specifically, ask from your role, because I know there's a whole staff, there's a whole room of you guys, whether it be in Lawrence or in Manhattan. But what do you feel like in today's day and age is kind of the key element to, the whole support staff system that is the recruiting department being successful?
Yeah, really for me personally, like I just want to be able to contribute to building a great class here with the staff. And like I was telling you before, our head coach is incredible. Our general manager is incredible. Taylor's incredible. I want to be able to help continue what they've been doing at a very long time for a high level. And, really from a recruiting standpoint, a lot of people, fans especially, and I don't fault them for this, look at stars, they look at recruiting class rankings. We'll know if we did a really good job recruiting a couple of years from now when we really see those guys on the field. And I think that's where it comes down to really evaluations and trusting in your evaluations, and then working incredibly hard at building relationships with those guys that you've identified that fit your model of what you're looking for within the program, and just going out and doing whatever it takes to go get those guys and make them really part of your team. And really the recruitment's never done, unfortunately, in today's day and age. So you're recruiting your current players as much as you are high school players. And because of that, really identifying what their mental makeup is from that standpoint. And how are they going to fit in the locker room? How do they contribute to the culture that we have here? Those are all things that you don't see on tape that you have to know throughout the process and learn throughout the process. And this staff has done an incredible job of that here, just in my short time of being here. And those are conversations that we're having all the time.
I feel like some of our first conversations were over preferred walk-ons and guys that were coming in to kind of fill out the roster. How important is it to hit on those guys now when you have so few preferred walk-on spots? You're only taking 4 or 5 maybe, as opposed to taking 10 or 15. And it almost feels like, yes, they're preferred walk-ons, but they're basically, scholarship players almost that are in addition, and that you hope at some point will be able to contribute on the field. They aren't just practice bodies anymore.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's extremely important. And you look at the tradition of those guys here, and what they've been able to do on the field and what they've gone on to become here. It's always been an extremely, extremely important thing within this program. But to your point, it's now more so than ever because, at any given point in time, through injuries, those guys could immediately end up becoming some of the more important players in your program. Immediately look for guys that add special team value within your program. Immediately look for guys that are going to do things the right way on and off the field, but guys that, to your point, Kevin, that you can see playing for you down the road hopefully, ideally, if you did a great job as a scholarship player.
Greg, I wanted to kind of wrap it up for me. My last question, and hopefully the parents and the prospects that are tuned in right now are listening closely. I'm going to allow you a chance to get up on your soapbox for a minute, because we're kind of hit that off season point, right? And you guys already have probably a big board going, but it's also kind of research and eval time, right, for future classes. Do you have any pet peeves when it comes to like social media? I mean, Kevin and I are always talking about like, you've got to have Huddle like updated at this point. My pet peeve, one of them is always like, make yourself easily findable, right? Like sometimes the handles on guys, it's like, man, I can't find this kid. Like I know he exists, but I can't find his handle because it's not his name or whatever. Like, do you have any things that are just make your life easier and the recruiting department's life easier? Pet peeve things that again, you can find a kid's profile or whatever, and you can hit 1, 2, 3 key elements that immediately like kind of paint the picture of who this player is.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So my best advice to high school players is what you're putting out on social, that's your resume, on top of what you're putting out on your film. So exactly like you said, Ryan, finding information as quickly, as easily as possible really helps you get recruited. And there's countless hours spent scouring different Twitter profiles and Huddle profiles. So on the back end of it, on your Huddle profile, make sure that you're updating your contact information as well as your Twitter handle. And on the front end of it with your Twitter handle, always include your name, your high school, and your film at a minimum right there, hyperlinked in your bio. And then it's also really useful sometimes if you quote tweet or pin your most recent highlights. But especially if you're an underclassman, it's also really useful to include your high school coach's information if we're not able to get in touch with you directly. But the cleaner that is, and the cleaner image that you're painting to recruiting staffs, that will help you out in the long run.
Well, that's how they should do the resume. I wanted to ask you, if players, coaches, or parents are interested in Kansas State, how can they get a hold of you guys to maybe have a chance to get evaluated?
Yeah, the most perfect example is coming out to our camps this summer. A little bit of a shameless plug there, but there's been, even just the guys that we had just talked about were camp participants, guys that have signed here with us. And there's been a long-standing history and tradition of guys that have come out to camp, been great players here, and been able to be identified and really get a chance. So that would be first and foremost the first way to do it. The second way to do it is just by being someone that your head coach wants to recommend. Be a high character person, be a hard worker, be visible when coaches are coming by within the schools, and when you're supposed to be where you're supposed to be within those workouts, within those classes. And then the third way, quite obviously, is just keeping things updated, like we just talked about on Twitter, and reaching out to us. That way is another outstanding way. But the recommendation of your high school coach carries a really high weight.
Well, thanks again, Greg, for stopping by the show. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening to the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on KCSN. If you enjoyed what you saw or heard, leave us a comment or review, like this video, subscribe here on YouTube, or hit us with a 5-star rating if you're listening on an audio platform. And until next time, we'll see you on the trail, and take care.